So, hey, welcome back to Next Third Best Third. I'm David Fenwick, the founder and host, and I'm here with my good friend, Ron Atkins. Welcome back, buddy.
Good to be back.
Yeah, so today we're going to be digging into the difference between perception and perspective and how we see things, right? And how we think about things affects everything in our life, doesn't it?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, that's a big difference in the way perception is how we think about a thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's the way our mind processes it, our understanding of it. And perspective is what we see.
Yeah, kind of the
from
way
the
you
place
view it.
we're at.
Yeah, from the place you're at, because you have a perspective of what you're seeing, right?
Yeah, I think that's a big thing because the place you're at really matters to us as human beings.
Right.
Because it's what we're going through, it's our situation, it's bad or good, we judge it however, a certain way. But when it comes to the actual perception of it, we need to have a God's eye view. We need to be able to have His perspective,
Right,
of what it is,
and so
instead
often,
of our own.
So often, I know because you and I we wrestle with things together, right?
Sure.
And what it does is it helps me to have you and other guys in my life, so that I get the right perception.
That's right. That's right. That's what I was telling you earlier about on our Dragon Slayer call the other night. Charles brought up one of our group members. We brought up a really important point about looking at where you're at from a different perspective.
Right.
Because he was talking about Rory McIlroy and the Masters,
That's right.
and how everybody wanted to see him win one, and he was really wanting to win one, and then at one of the last holes, he ended up missing a 3-foot putt. And he was dejected, He's
Right.
like, it's all happening again. I'm going to lose it right at the end,
Right, because that was the track record for
yeah,
him, right?
Yeah. And but his caddy said, you know what? When we started this tournament, if I'd have told you were going to end up in a playoff with a chance to win at the end, you would have took it, right? And he was like, shoot, yeah.
That's right.
So he changed his whole perspective, and he ended up winning.
Yeah, that perception of it, because he was looking at it saying, man, I'm about to lose. I've gone down this road again. This is horrible. I've blown a 4-stroke lead, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And yet his caddy comes up right next to him and says, this is good. Where you're at is actually good. It's not bad.
I know it. It always takes me back to Romans 8:28 when God says all things work together for good to those that love the Lord and are called according to His purpose.
Yeah.
And for a long time, and my story, and everybody that's seen the podcast knows my testimony about being in prison for 26 years and solitary confinement for 13 years. But I had this totally hopeless, and I still struggle with hopelessness a lot of times when bad things happen.
Yeah.
And it's like a familiar place I can fall back into and just be like, it's not going to work out, be negative,
Sure.
And but one of the things that really changed my perspective on all of it, my perception of it, was I had this ungodly belief that when's the next shoe going to drop? What's bad's going to happen next? Bad things always happen in threes and stuff like that.
Right. Things we believe.
And God really changed my whole perception of it through Romans 8:28, because He gave me a new godly belief to put in place of that, which was, it's good right now.
Mm-hmm. It's good right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if that scripture's true, that's what that means.
Right.
If you believe that the word of God in that scripture, then it's good right now.
Yeah.
No matter what the situation, right? No matter what you're going through, it's good right now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so many of our listeners obviously aren't Christians, right? But the truth remains that how we view things and seeing things for what they really are instead of what I'm experiencing. The followers here know my story, and 8 years ago when my life was it just fell apart. I was thinking, this is the worst thing that could have happened to me. It was bad, but I was like, man, this sucks. It's the worst thing that could ever happen to me. There's no hope. And yet I look at my life today and I'm grateful for what I went through, right?
Yeah.
It's It's not like, oh, I wish it happened, but I've been changed. I've been transformed. So, that is the perception, I've been able to process through and look at everything that happened that got me here. It's all good.
I think that gratefulness is super important.
Yeah.
Concept involved in your perception of things, because if you don't maintain that gratefulness,
Yeah.
I think you get off into entitlement, you get off into woe is me stuff, you get off into all kinds of other bad things. It could take you out.
Right.
But if you maintain that gratefulness, then it always keeps you above it. It always keeps you in hope.
Yeah. That's so good.
Because when I go into prisons and talk to men, I feel like that's the main thing that God releases through my testimony and through the teachings that I do in the prisons is hope.
Right.
Because in that place, it's a place of hopelessness. And a lot of those guys are facing life sentences like I was. And they see somebody that's been out for 10 years now. May the 5th is my 10-year anniversary.
That's fantastic.
Being out of prison. But, they just see it and they go, wow, it can happen. You know what I mean?
Don't you find, though, too, because I know you work with a lot of men in and out of prison, but there's a hopelessness in the prison of our own minds, right?
There is.
There's a hopelessness in the prison of we looking at our circumstances, and you could be, there's guys who are very successful financially. They have a hopelessness that they're carrying because of certain things in their life, right? And to be able to say, hey, I'm grateful for where I'm at. I know, like for you were in prison, but that's where your life changed.
Yeah.
Right? So there was, even in the reality of being in a 5x8 isolation cell for all those years, 13 years, right? Mm-hmm. But it was there that you really came to faith. It was there that hope was birthed inside of you.
That's right. Yeah, it was in that place. And then, even though I felt like that was the worst thing that could ever happen to me at that moment, that's another thing that my brothers the other night in our conversation were talking about was, 15 years ago when I was sitting in that cell, even though I'm struggling, going through things now in my marriage and different things that's happening in my life, if somebody would have told me 15 years ago and sitting in that cell that I was going to be in this position 15 years later,
right,
I would take it in a heartbeat.
In a heartbeat.
You know what I mean? Because at that point, I was thinking I would spend the rest of my life in prison.
See, in that perception, because I know some of the struggles you're going through right now, but that just puts everything into that place where you can be grateful for where you are right now.
That's right. No matter what's happening.
Yeah.
I think that's why it just makes me think of all the scripture that talks about, rejoice in suffering and even Christ on the cross, how he was, just forgiving everybody and lifting up God.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Lifting up his Father.
Yeah.
In that moment, which would seem like the worst possible thing in the world, but it saved the world.
Oh, that's right. I mean, if we go back to that, because here we are recording right before Easter, mm-hmm. is all his followers were like, "Oh, this is the worst.
This is the end.
This is failure. Everything we believed in is falling apart now. There's no hope." Right.
That's right.
But without the cross, there had never been the resurrection.
Yep. I heard a man say one time, the best proof that the resurrection is real is Fox's Book of Martyrs.
Oh, yeah.
Because nobody dies for a lie.
No one dies for a lie. That's exactly right. Yeah, that's one of my favorite books. So
yep.
It's powerful. So, here we are, we're talking obviously in the framework of next third of your life being the best third. And I think this is so important. It's because you have to have perception, mm-hmm. the right perception of what you're going through right now or where you're at right now. Taking that, we always talk about taking honest appraisal, examining your life and taking honest appraisal and looking at your life through the lenses of, it might not be where I want it to be right now. I wish it was different. I need to make changes, but man, there's hope because it can change.
That's right. I think what we need to take into is what we were talking about earlier is you need to take that perception that you get from the Father, you know what I mean? That that you're grateful that there is hope.
Yeah.
And take it into your perspective, right?
Yeah.
And the place you stand, what you're looking at right before your eyes, and interpret it through that.
Sure.
Right? Because if you stand in your own perspective, it's going to always be, you're going to always go to the negative. Because it looks negative most of the time.
I think that's true. It probably
because the world is the way it is,
And we all have, I wish something was different in my life, right?
Sure,
we all have that, right? I wish this was different. I wish I was in better shape. I wish I had more money. I wish I had
done a better job at that or whatever.
Right. Absolutely. And that regrets is what pulls us down. Mm-hmm. But to be able to sit there and take that point of view, that perception of saying, no, where I'm at right now, like you said earlier, it's good.
It's good right now.
It's good right now. It's a whole lot better than it could be,
Yeah.
I just wrote a check to the IRS. And I was like, oh, my gosh, I can't believe I had to do that, right? But I took the attitude. I said, hey, I had the money to write it.
Mm-hmm.
So it was good right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
The perspective was bad.
Yeah.
My point of view was bad, but the perception was totally different. I was grateful.
Yeah, I know that's a tough one. I hate doing that too.
Yeah.
But I really feel like it's so important for us as men to have the right perception of things, because if we don't, we can't lead from our own perspective.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We have to be able to reach out for something more that's beyond us, that perception of reality that comes from something else, because all the great philosophers, they talked about perception and perceiving reality,
Mm-hmm.
and they would even say, like perception is reality. But that's, for a human being, that's what leads us into moral relativity and just, there is no God.
Mm-hmm.
And coming up with our own morals.
Right.
You know what I mean? We're starting to see now that all that stuff from the Enlightenment is just taking us into a direction that really takes us out.
Right.
You know what I mean? It destroys civilization. It doesn't build it up.
No, and I think, we were talking before we started filming, and to be able to have the help and the assistance of other men, right? To see things through a different lens, right? To understand and to take into account, saying, it's like you bring to me in our conversations an attitude or a perception where you're saying, hey, David, it could be worse. This is what I've experienced. Come on, look at this in a bigger picture. We had I was with a group of guys recently, and I asked them to go around and say something that they like about themselves, right? And the reality was it was difficult for most of the guys.
Yeah.
It was difficult. Why is that? It's because of the way we view ourselves, right? It's from our perspective, it's like, man, I don't have anything. And yet I could go around that room and say great things about those guys, but they couldn't see it from themselves. So literally what we do is in one sense, we're calling out the gold in somebody, but we're also giving them vision. We're casting a vision of what could be in your life.
Changing their perception.
That's right.
Yeah. Because perception is the way you think about it.
Right. Right. And so often what we think about ourselves, we think about our circumstances. One of our good friends has been unemployed for a while, right? And he's got a big family, and he obviously wrestles with that reality. But I was talking to him just the other night, and some opportunities have come up for him, and he's positive. He's grateful. He's grateful for the savings account that he's been draining, for all these months. And but I just loved his perception, because he was thinking about, hey, I've gone through this. It's not going to get worse. It's going to get better. I'm about to have a breakthrough. And I was just so blessed by his attitude, so encouraged.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it when people have that fire and positivity.
Right.
It really affects me. That's why I love our guys that we have in the Dragon Slayer groups, and just the interactions we have. Because somebody I listen to a lot that's really awesome is like Jordan Peterson,
mm-hmm.
and he always talks about the fact that you can't be sane without the community, right? Because there's nothing for you to judge yourself against.
Right.
There's nothing for you to bounce things off of. There's nothing for you to. So if you're totally isolated, and you're saying, I mean, the Bible even says that in Proverbs that a man that isolates himself rages against his own soul.
Yeah. So true.
Right. And I think that's because you need that input from other men. Mm-hmm. And that's probably one of the big problems in our society is that, we've always stressed this individualization, this pull yourself up by your bootstraps and do it yourself.
Right.
Is masculine.
Right.
But that's actually the farthest thing from it.
Yeah, we've talked about this before in different episodes about true masculinity is being vulnerable, right? And being transparent and being courageous enough to say, hey, I can't do this on my own, right? Isolation wars against us. You brought it up with that, isolation. A man who isolates rages against himself.
Proverbs 18.
Yeah. I know, like personally, Ron, and you know this about me, I'm involved in people's lives all day. Right? I'm always investing. I'm always engaging with people, but yet I tend to isolate myself in the evenings. I tend when I'm struggling, I pull back.
I do that as well.
And man, it is so detrimental. It's like I start spiraling, and
That's
then
right.
you or somebody else calls me up, and we start talking. It breaks it because, first off, we know each other, but I've got other guys in my own Dragon Slayers, our Dragon Slayers group, guys who won't let me be there, right? They'll ask me a question and they're like, no, come on, really? Where are you? What are you struggling with right now? And it breaks it. It breaks off that hold. I stop spiraling, just because I'm engaging with another guy.
Right. Yeah, it makes all the difference in the world. And there's no way. It's like my wife says this all the time, but I mean, it's real simple. But when you're deceived, you don't know it.
Yeah, that's right.
A lot of people don't understand. I mean,
right.
It seems so simple, like that's stupid to say, but it's for real. Mm-hmm. Because, and the only way you can know it is if somebody comes in and tells you.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like you would just, if you were isolated, you would just live in deception because there's no way you would know it.
That's right. And so much of that deception.
Because there's nothing there to change your perception.
That's right.
Until another person comes in and points it out to you.
And so often we think like this is my reality, but is it really your reality? It's what you're thinking about your reality, and you can be believing a lie. It's like It's like this thing saying, "Oh well, you're never going to break through from this, right? You're never going to overcome this addiction, or you're always going to be stuck in this job, or you're never going to be happy, or all these things." It might be real for the moment, but that's not true reality. That's just a lie that you're believing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's your perception. Your perspective actually is what it is.
Yeah.
The way you see it from where you're at.
Yeah.
But it's only through other men coming in and speaking into your life, from a godly perspective, that you're able to change that. You're able to see the deception. You're able to understand how you're thinking in a wrong way,
right,
and come out of it.
Right. Yeah, it's truly like shedding light into the darkness.
Yeah.
It's funny. I was thinking of a Seinfeld episode where George Costanza tells Jerry, he says, "Remember, Jerry, it's not a lie if you believe it."
Yes, it is.
It is. I mean, just because I'm believing something, right? I can be believing the wrong thing. It's that stinking thinking kind of mentality, right? I'm believing the wrong thing. I'm believing a lie. And someone comes into my life and says, David says, "What are you doing?" That's not true at all.
Well,
it's like, wow.
We do have an enemy.
Yeah.
And he's all about lies.
That's right.
And he's been a liar from the jump, right?
Yeah.
So if we're going to be able to combat those lies, then we have to have, that support system. We have to have a godly perspective, mm-hmm. because we can't recognize them on our own.
Right.
If we could, Eve would have never fell for the serpents.
It's interesting. As we were talking, I was thinking about guys who are married, and we're not talking about you're not supposed to have your wife involved in, because your spouse is real important,
sure.
right? However, what ends up happening, I've seen, is sometimes the spouse and the two spouses they're walking this thing out together. They're almost believing the same lie. Like the husband might be struggling with his job, and his wife is like, well, you're always complaining, you're always struggling about this. She's not calling you out of it, right? And
Right.
it's just because sometimes they're too close, where you have other guys in your life who can come in and they can like intervene and say, hey, this is truth. You're just so stuck in this rut, right? So it's not about not talking with your spouse. That's a healthy marriage if you're interacting. So we don't want to be talking about, exclusion of your spouse.
No. Because you need a female perspective too.
Oh yeah,
for sure. I always I heard this Jewish scholar. He was talking about the word helpmate in Genesis. That in Hebrew, in the ancient Hebrew, it actually means beneficial adversary.
Wow, that's great. I love that.
I always thought that was pretty cool.
Beneficial
So they are
adversary.
definitely beneficial,
Yeah.
the spouses. But I just think that, maybe it's not always the best to be as vulnerable with her as it is when you are with your group of men that you have in your life, that speak into your life and that you trust. Because, I don't know, there was a line in a movie one time that said, she's your wife, not your priest.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough one, because I do think the honest and vulnerable relationship with your spouse is absolutely critical, right? A healthy marriage is going to have that. But I think it's in addition to, right? Because a lot of times if you're struggling in a particular area, maybe you just need that perspective or that perception that another man can give you.
Yep.
That just helps it. It helps
Definitely.
form it.
Yeah, it's just like, that's why young men need fathers
Right.
and mothers.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's two different perspectives going on there.
Right.
Perceptions and perspective.
That's right. Well, we talk a lot about, we needing men in our lives, but, we've said it before, you need men who you can aspire to be like, those guys who you go to and they carry wisdom, their life experiences, give you a perception and a perspective you never could have, right? I mean, I've gone through things in my life that a younger man can benefit from,
Right.
I don't want them to make the same mistakes I've made or to learn from my mistakes. Then you got the guys that you're walking with, the guys that are true brothers. The iron sharpening iron thing is true, because, it's not just your buddies. We talk about this a lot. It's not just having guys in your life that you play basketball with or you play golf with or just hang around with, but it's guys who truly can agitate you. Iron sharpening iron, that takes conflict,
Friction.
and friction, right? There's irritation, for me to call you out on your stuff, is irritating. I've gotten you mad before, you've irritated me before, those kind of things. But
Right.
that's what the kind of men we need to be walking with.
Yeah.
And then we need those guys who we can impart to, right? The guys who look at us for inspiration and to aspire to be like.
Yeah. Yeah, we need that in our lives for sure. I mean, I think, I probably wouldn't be sitting here today without men that have come alongside of me and
Right.
helped teach me, and because I miss so much in life. I even rely on like guys at my job that it's not even a spiritual thing. It's just, things that I haven't had the experience to know about, that they'll come alongside and say, hey, you need to do it this way or you need to do it that way, you know. And when I was younger, I probably wouldn't have listened to that.
Right.
But now that I have some humility and I understand that I need that.
Right.
I need, one of the amazing things that I learned, it's about 4 years ago, we went on this trip to Alaska with our group, Dragon Slayer group, and 4 of the guys live in Alaska. And, God had given me this word one time. I was going through this time in my life where I was always, every time I prayed or anytime I was interacting with God, I would just have tears. Tears would just come, you know. And I was asking the Lord, what is all this? You know, I'd never been a crier in my life, you know. For, I don't know, probably first 30 years of my life, I probably never cried. My dad always, like, if you cried, he would, like, whip you for it, you know. Men don't cry.
Right.
And God said, tears are a compass.
Or
And
compass.
if you're going places where nobody's ever been, you need a compass.
Yeah.
Right. And so I was thinking about that when I was in Alaska. And I was thinking, we were out there on snow machines riding with all these guys, you know, and these wilderness guys were with us that knew everything about it. We didn't know nothing. Everything out there can kill you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even if you're not dressed right, you could die. And so I was thinking, man, if we didn't have these fathers, these guys that are wilderness guys, even if we had a compass, we'd never make it.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's
it was
good.
like an added layer that God added onto it that was like, you know, you need these men to survive. Because if you don't, you'll die out here.
Right. That's so good.
Yeah, it really made an impression on me.
Yeah, that's so good. You know, because, you know, we're talking about seeing things rightly, you know, and how we think about the things we're going through. For us to be going through challenges in our life and have men in our lives who can say, hey, I've been there before. You're going to make it. This is what I did. You know, I know that I was helped greatly when I was going through all my pain 8 years ago from men from all over the United States, guys that I've known for years who would call me. One guy in particular, he had gone through almost the exact same circumstance about 15 years earlier. And like when he would call me up, he would describe exactly what I was going through. It was crazy. And he would say, okay, David, you're going to have to do this to get through this. And I was like, okay. And he says, no, I'm serious. He goes, most men won't do this. Most men won't do the hard work. You know, he says, for you to get through this, it's going to take this kind of effort. Like he told me, he says, whatever you do, because of the divorce that I went through, he says, whatever you do, he says, do not get involved in another relationship. He says, don't do it. He talked to me about taking care of my physical condition. He talked to me about simple things, about drinking water, right? He talked to me about self-care. He would talk to me about all this. And I'm telling you, without him, I would never have made it. It's because he had given me the way of thinking about what I was going through, right? So I could see it differently because I was in it and I was going, this is hell. This sucks. I can't believe I'm going through this. And he's like, I know exactly what you're going through. And he did. And so all of a sudden I'm like going, wait a minute. If I do what he says I'm going to do, I'm going to make it. Where I would never have been able to do that on my own.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It is amazing. So, you know, guys, this is, as you're listening to this, you know, we're just chatting here, right? But the thing that we want you to know is that, you know, first off, we're for you. You know, we understand everybody goes through stuff, right? Everybody has challenges. Everybody, no matter where you are in your life, you're facing something, and you need or I hope you have people in your life who you can go to, who can walk you through it, who can give you a better way of seeing things, right?
For sure, yeah.
Because
impart their perspective.
Yeah, it's not as bad as you think. I promise you, you're going to get through it. You're going to come out on the other side. And as Ron said earlier, right now, it's good right now. It might not feel it, but you're in a better place, and you're on for a lot of guys, you're at a place where you're going to see a breakthrough shortly.
Yep.
And I don't know what it's going to look like, but it's going to be good.
It's going to be good.
It's going to be good. So thanks so much for listening, for being here with us. If you do me a favor, like always, we want you to like this, to share it, to comment on it, subscribe if you haven't. But we appreciate you, and we're for you, that you're going to make the next third of your life the very best third.
Amen.
Okay.